Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a modern investing on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Starr, and today we have our guests, Dr. Milan Sombrak. Welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Have you and Jim Eat from Eat Foundation. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Sasha. Hi, Milan.
So today is Wednesday. The market is up, ever so slightly, but nevertheless up. I just wondering what a strong market we have with all these speakership problems and almost the default of U.S. Last week, which was almost there, but was averted in the last moment. And with all that, market is very resilient. And I'm wondering what will happen when finally we will go through October and to final stretch of the year, November, December, and of course then January effect or so on. So it is, you still have to be careful because even while you be up eventually, you don't want to go down big time. So I'm still have a lot of cash available and I'm not increasing my positions. The only thing what I did, I bought just for fun, 500 shares of Barrick Gold. It's a gold stock which went down quite substantially because of perception that there will be further hikes and interest rates will go higher, which is not bodes well for gold. So therefore, I I just put 500 position. 500 shares, and maybe I will land maybe 2,500 later on once situation will change. But right now, 500 is okay. And of course, my positions are heavily hedged in advanced micro devices, AMD. It's going through all these uncertainties fairly well. It's not spectacular, but at least I was working on a scenario that it will drop to $90 a share, and only from there on it will start building a base. But maybe it's not going to happen because it's even in worse scenarios in the last few days it went down to $100, but didn't go below that. So maybe it will build up the base and eventually will go to at least 110, 115, especially as their earnings report is coming. Hopefully it will be positive, but you never know. Jim, how you did fare last week?
Oh, last week, as you know, I think these months are too volatile for me, so I stay on the sidelines, and I'll start to become active. As the year ends. Typically, as the year ends, people sell stocks in order to have a tax offset their stocks that they have sold for profit. So there's that kind of thing that typically happens, and then in January, people start buying again. And so I am going to stay on the sidelines, but I'm very curious about a couple of things that have happened, especially in the last week. As you mentioned, the speaker, for the first time in our history, the House Speaker was ousted. And did that rattle the markets? Apparently not.
Well,
And
yesterday was not very pleasant day for the market.
yes, but it wasn't something that caused this enormous selling. And what we perceived is that the things, even when it's pretty chaotic right now in the House, the economy is still moving along just as it was. I've been a long time critic of the Fed for reacting to the inflationary data the way that they did, because the inflation was caused by the global breakdown of the distribution system, and the way to cure inflation was to repair the distribution system, which we are seeing. One of the things that's very interesting now is there's a new rollout of a new COVID vaccine, and the COVID vaccine is experiencing distribution problems. We're getting a new variant of the COVID, and they've created a vaccine to help people. I think maybe we're going to be getting a flu shot and a COVID shot at the same time, this time of year in the future. but we're having trouble distributing it. The CDC is not giving the cards out like they used to, and there's a very interesting thing going on with that. But people still seem to be critical of the market in general, even though they are personally doing very well. And I think this is expressed. And I know that Milan looks at uh, the a different indicator to tell us about the market happiness. But I look at the green that we're seeing today. People are just individually quite content compared to what they think of everyone else. They think everyone else is having a terrible time of it, but I don't see it. I
And
see.
as you know, Jim, the market is always right. You can't fight the market. Market is always right. But about vaccines, I read somewhere that these vaccines are not going to be free. You will have to pay for
Yes.
vaccination. And actually, it may happen that they will be perceived as more valuable than when they're free. So there will be no so much resistance. There are, in my opinion, very few people who would want to be vaccinated and just won't have enough money to do that. I don't think that's the case. And so we'll see. We'll see this new COVID. It's still a largely unknown entity and what are its effects, and whether it's so dangerous as some people believe. So we'll see. We'll see about that. Milan, what about you? How are you faring this week?
Well, you stated a little earlier today, Sasha, that yesterday the market wasn't doing so well. And the Monday Morning Millionaire membership is half the Americans. We have about 300 members, half Canadians, mostly dentists. And we advise them to be in the US dollar entirely. So yesterday the market did not do so well, but the US dollar did. So our portfolios are up, even though the market is not up. And of course, that doesn't happen all the time, but it does now occasionally. So it should happen more often. Now, you were talking about the vaccines, and experts tell us that COVID is here to stay, just like the common cold and the flu, and we get vaccines for those things, the flu vaccine. And they are working on combining flu vaccine together with a common cold vaccine together with a COVID vaccine, which we will get annually and be protected that way. Another area, though, that it needs attention is shingles. Shingles is very
Yes.
pleasant, and older people get shingles. And now there's a vaccine against shingles that exists today, and we should all get it. And it costs, but it prevents so much discomfort and pain. Interestingly, before COVID, the average American could not write a check for $400. The shingles vaccine costs close to $200, which tells me that the average individual cannot afford one, which is shameful. When I think about the way we treat healthcare in Canada versus the United States, it's a night and day comparison. The leading cause of personal bankruptcy in the United States is healthcare costs, which Canadians don't even have to worry about. However, Tax Freedom Day is that point in the year when we are working for ourselves and not for the government. And in Canada, that's about halfway through the year, whereas in the United States, it's somewhere in March or April. So the Americans are paying much less in taxes, but they're paying through the nose for education, as are we, and paying through the nose for healthcare, many of them, leading cause of personal bankruptcy. I think it's a terrible indictment on both of these countries, the wealthiest on the planet, the wealthiest in history. The students graduate, a dental student, with a debt of $300,000. That's the average. $500,000 is not uncommon. And so that's how they start their careers. The Western world, advanced world, people that we admire in the Scandinavian countries, Germany and so on, people don't pay for higher education. Higher education, more educated people earn more and they pay more income taxes, so that funding education by a nation is an investment for that nation. They more than get it back from the increase in income taxes that educated people pay. All the communist countries, even poor ones like Cuba, educate their people at no charge. So are we ever going to be able to do anything about that? Because people who control the money also control the political interests. And so, will we ever be able to get tax-paid education, higher education in Canada and in the United States?
Those are great questions. There's another one that I wanted to mention earlier, and I want you guys' opinion on. Bond yields are going up,
Yeah.
and well, would that affect your asset allocation? Would that affect your investment strategies at all?
Yes, in the asset allocation, we talk about the 50-50 asset allocation works best for most people, whereas there is 55-45 or 60-40.
right.
So it hardly makes a difference. 50-50 works for most people. And if half of that is invested in cash or near cash, then that part does not drop when the market drops, but that part doesn't go up when the market goes up. And now, when bonds are paying such returns that we haven't seen such wonderful returns from bonds
Right.
for a long time, we tell our members not even to know how to spell the word bond, because most of the time, after taxes, bonds are a losing proposition.
Yeah.
Guaranteed instrument of confiscation, GIC, guaranteed instrument of confiscation, because we lend a company or the government $1,000. Let's say we buy their bonds. When we get our $1,000 back, 5 years, 10 years from now, it buys less.
Right.
So this is the first time that we've seen bonds so high. So maybe people are willing to tie up some of their money in bonds. Might be a good time to do that, and I don't think that they can take it out at any time. If they buy a bond, they have to hold it to maturity, which could be a year.
No, not necessarily. You can trade bonds. You can sell it and buy it back.
And you can buy index funds of bonds.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's right. So now the other thing is, we recommend that nobody needs a fund portfolio, because for most people, fund portfolios are not so much fun. Now, there are 4 ways to beat the market reliably. First of all, to equal the market, which very professionals can do over the long term. When you take a look at SPIVA, SPIVA, which stands for Standard and Poor versus Active Investing, over a 10 or 15-year period, very few market advisors and professionals can equal simply holding the market. And we can teach a high school student in less than 2 minutes how to equal the market, simply by SPY, which reflects an accurate representation of the S&P 500, which is an accurate representation of the American economy as a whole, the strongest economy in the last couple of 100 years. That way, you can equal the market effortlessly. Now, can you beat the market? Yeah, there are 4 ways to beat the market. One is dollar cost averaging, not an individual security, but the market as a whole, by buying an exchange traded fund which tracks the S&P 500. So that's one way, guaranteed to beat the market. The second way is to buy a security. We don't recommend that people buy individual securities, but this is an exception. Buy a security when the company is buying its own shares. Those go up all the time. That's a simple way to make money. The third one is the appropriate use of derivatives. We have to underline the word appropriate. It isn't something that people instantly know. They have to take a program to learn how to do that, but that's doable. And the fourth way is to pick the right stock. And picking the right stock works only half the time, because when we buy a stock, we are buying it from somebody who's selling it. Can both of us be right? If the stock goes up, the buyer is right, the seller is wrong. If the stock goes down, the buyer is wrong, the seller is right. So rarely, occasionally yes, but rarely are both parties correct. Now, who would drive a car knowing that there's a 50% chance of an accident? Nobody would do that. Yet we do in the stock market all the time. Why? Because Wall Street wants us to do that. And Wall Street has such an enormous influence on our educational system. The influence was taught on our MBA programs to favor Wall Street, to encourage us to trade. Wall Street wins all the time, and the individual investor wins occasionally. That's okay, but not important.
But when you talk about the fourth thing of picking the individual stock, and we were just talking about COVID and the vaccine, and what about companies that are going to be able to profit from producing those vaccines?
Well,
Are
now,
those wise
yeah,
investments?
those companies are in the right area. However, the future of a company depends more on management than it does on what area it's in.
A
Management
particular
is important,
product?
and we hardly ever check management, although that can be done, perhaps not easily. But if you have a well-managed company, then it's going to grow. If the companies selling buggy whips today are a profitable place to be because the Amish and the Hutterites and the people like that are still using buggies and buggy whips. They need them. So if they're well made and the business is well managed, they can do well. Hotels, the bar in your shower, that curved bar on which the shower curtain hangs, the manufacturer of those bars is making more money than the hotel is today. Most hotels are losing money. People making those curved bars are making money. So who would believe that? So
Yeah, who would believe that? But speaking of making money, and I had a question because I was actually going to tease Jim this time along and everything because I'm always looking at the internet and looking at things, and there are a number of folks that were concerned about a form of technology, not AI this time, Sasha, but there was a thing called 5G, and if you listen to the conspiracy theorists, they are going to be testing the phone systems later on today, the EBS systems, and there are some conspiracy theories that swear that you should turn off your phone because the zombie apocalypse is about to take place and
Uh-huh.
all along those lines. So that's what they claim that this is going to take place in about an hour from now. So maybe we all have to invest in 5G and all along those lines. So what are y'all's thoughts? Because like I said, I was reading and there are a number of people on social media that are warning that it's going to activate the vaccine because apparently the vaccine has activation capabilities and we're all going to start walking around and doing crazy things in about an hour.
Wow, great.
Well, the Y2K thing kind of came and went too. So,
Yes.
some of these things aren't, but it was interesting that because I just read about this best-selling series that was predicting the end of the world in 2000, and people bought into this. And so the person who wrote the books about it kept writing new books and kept making more money because people were panicking. And that's one of the things that I've always been able to exploit the market on is when I see panic. I go in the opposite direction, just as the contrarian that I am. But these types of things, these panics, 5G is here to stay, and it's just another technology, and it's really nothing to worry about. And so pay no attention to it. There's nothing to see
Jim,
here. Keep moving.
if you remember this, remember story about the fact 2000, where all computers would have to be
Right.
realigned and all that. There were a handful of companies which were pushing into that area, and I must tell you that I bought one stock. Uh, the name was Zytel. I'm not sure that it's still around.
I
Probably
don't
not.
know it. Yeah.
But it went from $2 a share to about $75 in a very short period of time. I got into around $5, and then as stock went up to $60, I still didn't want to sell, but I was selling covered calls.
Hmm.
Heavily into the money. Let's see, stock 60. I was selling $50 covered calls, and I made a lot of money on that stock. Actually, my daughter's wedding was paid by this company in full and more,
Uh-huh.
and she had very very good wedding
Just by
in
that investment,
Four
you got to pay your
Seasons.
daughter's wedding. That's amazing. Hey, Milan, you mentioned the hotels not doing that well and everything, but I remember there was a time that folks were wanting to invest in Airbnbs, bed and breakfasts,
Yeah.
and then a number of other things. And I think Airbnb is still doing good as a company and all along those lines. I'm not sure about Inclusive, which was a company similar to Airbnb, but I was just wondering your thoughts around that industry as a option for folks that are thinking they want to invest in things because I know a lot of people are trying to figure out one where they're going to live themselves, but two about this notion of housing and hotels and motels as an investment. And like I said, the one that I had heard that was doing well in the stock market sometime back, and I think it still is, was Airbnb.
We're always looking for a low price, high quality, and good service. And we can only have two out of those three. Now, Bed Bath and Beyond was offering service.
Mhm.
It's going out of business or has gone out of business, while Winners and Walmart offer very little service. You can hardly get a human being in there to take you anywhere, but they offer low price. And so people are more interested in low price than they are in high quality or good service. High quality, you can get that certainly at Walmart. When you're buying something like, let's say, a Gillette razor blade, is the same quality, doesn't matter where you get it. But the service is totally lacking because people cost money. So the fewer people you have on staff, the lower your expenses. We are all looking for ways to lower our expenses and to increase our revenue. So the dollar stores are doing well. Walmart, 56 years ago didn't even exist. It got to a point at one time where it was the number one biggest company on the planet in a matter of 50, 60 years, based on low price, no service. The quality is there. Where you buy your aspirin from Walmart pharmacy or from a real pharmacy is the same quality. And so that's being in the right industry is not enough. You have to really understand management.
And,
How
and along those points, when you don't hire enough people, you save on the people that you do have get overworked and grumpy. So not only do you
Oh,
not
yes.
provide the service, but they're crummy service when you do get it.
No, it's crummy service, but not only
Hey,
that, but
But
the
the
thing that
price is
I've
great.
noticed is that a lot of businesses, including some that y'all invest in, have been doing what I call the Sheets model. And Sheets, of course, is a very popular gas station. But the reason I call it the Sheets model is because Sheets isn't just in the gas business. You can go to Sheets to get your takeout food because they also have like a little takeout service and everything. You can go to Sheets to get your drugs. You can go to Sheets to get a number of other things. So it
One
does seem
stop.
like a number of companies are diversified. They're not just being just what it used to be like you would go to the gas station because it was only selling gas. But now they are doing a variety of things in those businesses. So, Sasha, is that something that you are noticing as well? And even maybe there are some of the companies you're invested in? Because I see a lot of companies that are diversified. They're not just one business, they are multiple businesses.
That's for sure.
In that area, if I would buy one stock, it will be nothing but Costco. Obviously, Costco is the most amazing company. What they're doing here is that because of this initiation fees, they're making so much money that then they can sell premium products, primarily under their own brand, Kirkland, at cost. They don't need to make any money on products. So if they're saying high quality product at cost, that's it. Nobody can do it.
Sasha, I wrote Chess for Dummies, and one of the reasons it
Yeah.
was the bestseller was that the publisher went through Costco. And so you could go to Costco and buy it for less than you could in any bookstore
Right.
or
Absolutely.
online anywhere else. And it was a brilliant thing. That's I fell in love with the publisher for the other For Dummies books, which is why I wrote to them about Chess for Dummies, because that was the way that they got around all the bookstores taking their shares and all that kind of stuff. And they just made these deals with Costco, and it turns out that people buy good quality products at less expensive prices, and it's a great model, and it has worked.
Yeah, Tesla, for instance, doesn't have any dealers. You don't walk onto a dealer's lot and drive your Tesla up there when you bought it. When you place an order, they start making it at that point. After you place your order and pay your money, they start making your car, which you can then pick up maybe 2-3 months later. You don't just drive it off the parking lot. So they have eliminated the dealer. The dealers are very unhappy. You couldn't buy a Tesla in Michigan for the longest time because Michigan is an automotive state. So yeah, they have eliminated that middleman who needs to get paid. Now, you, Sasha, were talking about a company that was selling some items at cost. Well, all companies engage in loss leaders. They do that. They have loss leaders to get you into the store.
Did I say some products? I said all products.
All products.
All products, especially under their brand, Kirkland. They're
Yes.
high quality products and they're selling them at cost.
How are they
So
making money? How are they making money?
Fees.
Yeah, they
and
do memberships. They're like Sam's. They do
All
Sam's
right.
Club, and Costco is a membership company. They're a
so they
membership.
don't care about profits.
Hey,
And they are a very profitable company. If you look at their stock,
Selling memberships like Costco does.
yeah,
Costco gets a lot of money from memberships.
yeah, membership
absolutely.
is that's how they make their money. Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, there is a major company, a major health company that is having a major issue with their employees. Y'all are talking about employees, so I'm thinking that people are going to be running away. And correct me if I'm wrong, from Kaiser Permanente stock, since Kaiser Permanente just had this massive walkout and all along this line. So is this going to be the case? Because it sounds like 75,000 Kaiser Permanente employees have walked out and they are now on strike. So I'm thinking
I'm not familiar with that company, never followed. So, Jim, maybe
Yeah.
you know anything?
Yes. Kaiser's more popular out here in California,
Mhm.
and many people have it because it is, it's really, really good for, say you break your arm or something like that, and it's not as, like if you have something more complicated or you want, it's a life or death situation. I have the option of going to Stanford and hospital, and that would be my preference, but they're a huge employer, so
Mhm.
this strike is enormous, and it will have enormous consequences on a lot of people. So it's correct for Mark to bring it up, and as far as its impact on the stock, I don't track the stock. I'm not into the healthcare stocks, so I'm not knowledgeable about that, but I do know that there's an enormous human cost to it. But the people that are on strike for a reason. They're being overworked. It's just they're being asked to do. And it's a lot with with the impact of COVID. Lots of people in the medical industry were overworked for a long, long time.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So
Nurses are the most underappreciated people on the planet. Nurses, and in the United States, teachers also. In Canada, teachers do all right, but yeah, underappreciated people. I have
I agree.
daughter and son-in-law, both of whom are in the film business, and so people in film have been on strike now for a long time. Some people, replacing people. People are costly. If you can replace people with machines or AI, you're going to do better. So people in the film industry have been on strike for quite a while, and I think they settled it. I'm not sure. But
they
people
settled
who
one
are
of them.
writing,
They had a guest on earlier this week. I think it was Monday. So they settled. I think it was the actors that settled or the writers that settled. It's one of them that settled, and the other one is the still settling. I think it's the writers that settled, if I'm correct, Jim, and it's the screen actors that are still
That's
on
my feeling
strike.
too. Yeah.
writers can totally be replaced by AI, as can illustrators. Now, a medical doctor using artificial intelligence in his practice will do better than the medical doctor who is not using artificial intelligence. The first one will replace the second one. So they have to do it, but they have to do it in a knowledgeable, intelligent way. Some experts, about 1,000 experts, have signed a petition asking us to stop using AI until we've had a chance to check it out a little better. So yes, illustrators are going to lose their jobs because AI can do that. Composers are going to lose their jobs. I've heard some compositions, Sasha, so have you probably, done by AI. Damn good stuff. Yeah.
But
And,
Milan, you said writers could be replaced by AI,
uh,
and I, as an author, and I read your stuff, some of your stuff, and you're an author as well. Do you really have confidence that AI could replace the quality of the humans? I think it's years away. I think
I like to fool myself into believing that it cannot, but I think I might be fooling myself. Yeah.
I think you're right in the long term, but right now I still see the need for uh, creativity that only humans can provide, and also their perspective that only humans can provide.
Yeah,
AI is good at regurgitating and fact finding, so it's an excellent medical use as a
Yeah.
diagnostic tool.
Right. Yeah.
And but as far as the creativity, and I can't speak to music the way you and Sasha can, but and Mark in your field as well, but I can say that in the field of creative writing, I still see that just as they were, Sasha, you will remember when the first chess playing programs, computer programs, they were horrible, and
they were very
then
hard.
at some point they got very, very good. And
Mhm.
I anticipate that I still haven't seen that very, very good yet.
Jim, I got good news for you. Bobby Del Rio, that was the actor and producer that I interviewed and everything, and he actually lives there in LA and works in Hollywood, is of your opinion. He thinks that it is overblown, this whole conversation around AI. He has actually worked in the field and he's not as concerned about AI taking his job and all along those lines. So if folks want to go back and watch that interview that was on Monday, you will see that he is very much feeling that it was a overblown aspect and that he agrees with you that it doesn't have quite the notion of understanding human nuances and human emotions and all along those lines. So he's actually of the opinion that we are decades away, if not further away, from this being a real concern.
Deep Blue beat Kasparov. How long ago was that, James? 30 years ago?
Yeah, 1998.
Yeah, 1998. A computer beat the best chess player on the planet, and they're getting better now. This phone that I have here,
I know.
got a chess program in it. They'll beat the world champion, and it costs nothing to do.
Hey, Milan and Sasha and Jim, and I do not play chess as much as I did when I was a kid, and I played a little bit then, but I've never been at y'all's level, and we never pretended to be at y'all's level. But I did read, then y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, then a 16-year-old just recently beat Magnus Carlsen, who is supposed to be like this top-rated chess player, and I found
Magnus is currently the best player in the world, no question, yes. Yeah, and there are prodigies all over, especially right now. We're seeing them, and Sasha, you can agree with, from India and China. They're just their creativity and talents, and also, some of the former Soviet countries are they're finding their own national identity in chess and becoming real powerhouses. So
Samuel Reshevsky at age 8 beat 20 international masters, 20 people at your level of chess, James.
So I have a picture of him doing it.
A picture, the famous picture, 20 masters, and he beat them all at age 8. Wired differently from me. You are wired that way. I mean, to reach your level of chess expertise, you got to be wired differently than the rest of us.
The tragedy of Reshevsky is that he had to become a bookkeeper.
Yeah, he was an accountant, was he?
Yes, an accountant, yes.
And therefore he could not develop, of course, his enormous talent.
But I'd like to say something tangential to what we're discussing here. Mark, a few weeks ago, suggested that we take a look at Victoria Gold for our fund portfolios. And I looked into Victoria Gold, and it's now trading at just under $6. And only 2 Morningstar analysts are following it. Morningstar analysts are the ones that we can trust because they're objective. All the other ones are working for a company, for a Wall Street company, which is into selling more than anything else. And so these 2 are both recommending Victoria Gold as a long-term hold, very positive. And so for people who have a fund portfolio, and mine has never been a lot of fun for me, and I think I fall into that category of most people. We're not market wizards like Sasha Starr is. Victoria Gold might do the trick. So
Milan, let me get this correct. If I want to make sure that everybody heard, the person that has the least experience in the financial area, which would be me, actually a winner possibly in everything. But then know that I was able to pick some sort of winner through my research and everything, because I'm the one with the least amount.
We're never going to hear the end of that.
This gold stocks, actually, this situation is very simple. You have to understand what are the resources, how much gold is there in the ground. Then you have to look at the production cost. So if production cost is fairly low and there is a certain amount of gold, there are certain expectations that the cost of production will remain steady. Maybe it will go even lower through new technologies or so on. Now, with the big multinationals like Barrick Gold, for example, there are some risk involved because a lot of it's outside of Canada and United States, and there could be some foreign governments, like in Latin America or so on, squeeze them for more taxes and so on. So that's another risk area. And the main question is whether the price of gold will move higher or lower or stay the same. Now, if you're anticipating that the gold price will move higher, then almost any gold company shares will go higher. Depends on their circumstances. So for example, if Barrick has enormous resources, so if gold will move higher, it's now 18 something, 1832 or something. So it will move higher to say 1950 or even 2000, which is quite possible in a matter of few months. Then the stock will shine. Now the risk that it will go much lower. Yes, there is a risk, but then gold has to move much lower. It's already moving lower almost every single day, and I
That's
think that by mid next year, all this raises of interest rates will be gone. There will be no more raising
Well,
rates.
they're the highest they've been for a long time. Now, interesting about gold, the most interesting thing about gold for all of us is that a given weight of gold will buy the same amount of wheat or barley as it did 5,000 years ago. That is, its purchasing power remained the same while it's fluctuating the whole time. In the long run, it remains the same, it has the same purchasing power, which is a valuable thing to have, but it does fluctuate a great deal. For example, Eric Sprott is a Canadian gold investor who has managed to do very well for Eric Sprott. But in the last couple of years, Eric Sprott is a billionaire as a result of being able to time markets well. But in the last couple of years, he just built a $7 million second home somewhere in Arizona. His investors lost money. His investors lost money. So that's what happens with that fluctuation, that 30% fluctuation within a year or two or three. Gold has been doing that historically forever. So if we hold some gold because it retains its purchasing power, it's something that we should hold into the distant future and not expect to profit from it in the short term.
I'm prepared to hold gold as long as it shows green. If it shows red, I'm not a holder.
yeah,
Red is bad.
that's not just temperament. He doesn't like red.
And everything.
Yeah.
I told Sasha on the other show earlier that just for the fun of it, sometimes we do things for fun and all along those lines. I did go, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, and bought a $2 lottery ticket. I'm now looking at the numbers and saw that I have not won, but I'm not sure anybody else won either because apparently it's up to like a billion something. So we'll see if anybody becomes an instant billionaire. But like I said, I had a few dimes laying around and everything, and I decided I would just buy that one ticket on a one shot, and knowing that was probably not going to pay out. The odds were like 1 to a billion, and even I know that. But I was definitely just so glad do that just for the fun of it. I've done that a couple of times. It's a very rarity that I do it.
No, Mark, I'd rather sell lottery tickets than to buy one.
If I could give you a gas station, I'd be selling them all day long. I agree with you on that. So I definitely agree with you that. And if I could find a way to do that, I would take you up on that, and we could start a lottery business right here in North Carolina and make a whole heap of money. Because I saw a whole lot of people buying those tickets on a regular basis. Like I said, I do it just on occasion and just for the fun of it and all along those lines. But yeah, maybe that'll be a business we'll go into here in North Carolina and everything.
You're talking. I'm sorry, Sasha. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say you're talking about gold mining stocks, and I think gold is special for reasons Milan just told us about. But mining stocks in general pique my interest from time to time, and I've always resisted it because I just don't feel knowledgeable enough in those areas. But when we're talking about rare earth, minerals now, like even nickel, copper. These types of things, and now lithium, cobalt, and these things are becoming quite essential for the advanced, computing devices that we make, for the batteries that we make to run the Teslas, that sort of stuff. So all of us, there's a new buying opportunity out there if you time it right, as Milan suggests. And I don't feel like I have the ability to time it right, to know when to get in and get out. Or I would be into that. That's
good for you, Jim, because most people don't have the ability to time markets. Timing markets doesn't work. The only people who love that is Wall Street. They love to see you try time markets, and they love to see you actively trading, both of which are losing propositions. Used to be a time that you could predict the market fairly accurately by the movement of copper prices. copper played such a significant role in so many areas that copper futures predicted the performance of the market fairly regularly, fairly reliably. I'm not sure that's the case anymore, because a lot of what copper used to do is now being done by other minerals. Nickel. Canada at one time was the world's leading nickel producer. The president of the company, Inco, used to be a patient of mine. And so Canada at that time, about 30, 40 years ago, produced over 95% of the world's nickel. It's down to 50% now because they found it in a lot of other areas, including in the oceans of many nations. So
Right.
nickel is very useful. Your stainless steel sink in your kitchen has a lot of nickel in it. And so that stainless steel was developed by an Inco engineer, and it's all over the place. It's used in automobiles, it's used
Sure.
in kitchen sinks and so on, and you name it. Anytime you see stainless steel, it has a significant nickel component in it. And so nickel plays a very important role in the economy of the world.
And now we're seeing cobalt, but like what Sasha suggested this earlier is that cobalt is often can be mined in countries that aren't necessarily that stable, and
More than that, Jim. Many of these minerals are mined under such inhumane conditions.
I agree.
That if you saw how they were done, there's a company in Canada, in Alberta, where they mine coal just by stripping it off the top of the mountain. They don't have to make a hole in the ground, just shave it off the top of the mountain and send it to China. China is the biggest user of coal, Canadian coal, and they also use coal from Australia.
Yeah, strip mining is horrible.
Yeah,
I'll let you know something what's happened in the United States, in the city of New York. About not 50 years ago, but say late 70s. So there was a construction of skyscrapers in Manhattan, and there were Polish people working there, and they were paid. Sometimes they were not even paid, but even when they were paid, it was much less than minimum wages. They were kept in absolutely inhumane conditions in some kind of places where they had illnesses, especially during the winter time, and it was absolutely gross. And you know who was their boss?
Trump.
Absolutely, Donald Trump.
Why did I know that?
Yeah, you guessed it right. Absolutely. This is
in Wales, they were mining coal in the 19th century, and they're sending kids down the shafts because the shafts were too narrow for adults.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and the kids would go into the shaft in the morning. It was still dark, and leave the shaft late in the evening after 10 hours of work or 12 hours of work. It was dark. They never saw daylight except on Sundays.
Yeah.
And the mines were owned by British nobility who never did anything except go there to take advantage of the women that they wanted to take advantage of. But that's the way that a lot of coal used to be produced. And coal and iron had made the Industrial Revolution possible.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a whole phrase, the canary in the minefield, because they would literally send canaries down in West Virginia, and in order to see if the canaries could survive. And if the canaries could survive, then they would send the mine workers down and all along those lines. And if they couldn't, then they wouldn't.
Well, this is part of our history that we don't teach anymore. The lyrics to Coal Miner's Daughter. There's also the, I owe my soul to the company store. These people had, they had no other options. And so, when we talk about other forms of energy, there's this inhumane price that we're trying to not pay anymore, and let them live above ground, for example, and tap into sources of energy that are more viable, sustainable, and humane. So this is sometimes we get political about this, and it gets down to dollars and cents, and people want to say, I've heard people say on television that as long as we can breathe the air, then we want to keep mining. And you know, well, what happens when you
Jim,
can't
what's the
breathe?
type of investment? There's a word, and it's a type of investment where you're basically trying to make sure that you are being environmentally sound, or that you're being socially conscious, and all along those lines. And it's a type of,
Yeah,
you
ESG.
huh?
Yeah,
What's it?
ESG.
Right. What does
Yeah,
that stand for again?
environment, social governance. I think if I have my mind might be playing tricks on me, but it's something like that. But you basically it's ecologically taking the ecology and the social welfare into the equation.
Right.
These are variables that I took environmental economics back in the 70s. It was the first year that it was offered, and you had this variable that people used to use in economics, and they didn't have the variable for human cost or say
Yeah, yeah.
dumping waste into the water.
Jim,
That was never costed out. And
let me ask you, don't you think that in the case of mining, that slavery is much more progressive form for mining, because as a slave owner you care about your slaves, you want them to live as long as possible, you want them to be productive, so you take good care of them. Now if you're simply supplying them jobs to some people that you hire or so on, and some of them will die, so you hire some other people, you don't care much. What do
this
you
is
Remember that
brutal.
explosion in Bhopal, India?
Yes,
Yeah, and I don't know how many people died, but a very large number of
a
people
large
died.
number.
And what was the chemical company that was involved? I've forgotten that too. But what I do remember is that that company, an American company, met the regulatory requirements that were in place in India when that took place. Those regulatory requirements would not meet North American standards or European standards, but they were okay by Indian standards. So they behaved as expected by the
Well, that's
standards
why
of
in
they
the
were working.
80s we shipped so many jobs overseas because
Yeah.
they didn't have these messy things like OSHA that and if you operated the machinery and lost your fingers, they just got another person to operate the machinery.
I
And
exactly?
mean, we had the same conversation around child labor even today, because a number of countries are still hiring people that are child laborers, and definitely
Yeah.
there is some exploitation both in Latin America, African nations, Asian nations, a number of other nations as well, probably even some of the poor European nations, even. So I was in that part of the conversation that folks have been having, because I know some Hollywood stars that have gotten in trouble because they have backed some companies that they later found out had some children laborers in that space.
yeah, if you're involved in that and you don't know it and you find out later, it's embarrassing, but you can't really hold those people accountable for it because you really don't know what these companies are doing, you know.
Yeah, it's much better situation when you're talking about crypto, because they're not using the slavery type of conditions, and everything is nice, and you're producing cryptos and people paying $65,000 for one Bitcoin. What could be a better business than this?
Well, we just said the better business. Me and you are going into the lottery business. You have a bet going on, and me and you
Yeah.
are going into the lottery business. So I thought we were going to be setting up a lottery store here in North Carolina, Sasha.
Oh.
I just have to figure out where we're going to build it at.
Yeah,
Canada has one of the biggest agricultural activities on the planet, among the biggest. California agriculture is bigger. And California agriculture could not exist without 50% illegal workers.
Seasonal immigrant workers, yes,
Not
and
just
they are
California,
illegal
is
technically,
Texas. Not just
and we should
California,
give
is
them
Texas, South
cards.
Carolina.
Yeah.
by the way, there's a lot of discussions in the United States about immigration, illegal immigrants, and so on. But they're all mostly young people coming from South America, like Venezuela or Mexico or some other countries. They're healthy, so they're not going to drain U.S. health system. They're ready to work 40 hours a day.
They'll do jobs that we won't
They'll
do.
do jobs that the Americans cannot do, and their health is on. It's a great proposition. I don't understand why.
You
Canada
know what?
needs a lot of people. Canada gets
Yeah.
all sorts of immigrants because Canada needs people.
At the,
But
other,
that's
at the other end,
also
at
needs.
the other end of the scale, Sasha, highly educated people who get their education in a third world country, the minute they qualify as a physician or a nurse or an engineer, they start looking for ways to get out of there and move to the West. So the countries that they come from pay for their education, and we benefit from that. Yeah, there's a lot of that happening. How many qualified physicians in Canada come from other parts of the world that paid for their training? Yeah.
Yeah, but in Canada, they still have to go through all the internship and exams and so on.
Well,
So
they
it's not.
do, yeah, they do, yeah. But they're lost. They're lost to their country, and furthermore, a lot of these people are very capable people, and they're the ones that could bring their countries around and turn them around from poverty and from third world nations into advanced countries. The very people who could do that leave those countries for the sake of their children, and they move to the Western world. They move to New Zealand, Australia, Canada, United States, Western countries for the sake of their children.
You can't blame them. You have.
And the thing I admire most about them is they start businesses that the average American wouldn't start.
Absolutely.
And this is the thriving community. And I patronize many of those people. And, I just admire them so much. And I was talking to my dry cleaner, for example,
Yeah.
And he's worked 6 days a week since he started the business. And, I don't know too many people that I've been around that work 6 days a week. I did for about 10 years, but, I got out of it as soon as I could, the high pressure, job that I was doing. And,
James, I was night skiing, and the man next to me, he says he's from South Korea. He says, "See these skis? My son bought them for me. See this pass? My son bought it for me. He's a doctor." And so what happened is this man and his wife ran a convenience store when a 7-Eleven opened up across the street, open 24 hours a day.
Right.
So they decided they need to be working 24 hours a day. The kids were not allowed into the store because they had to study. Kids not allowed into the store. And these two people making themselves available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in order to advance, which their kids did, and ultimately they did too. But yeah, some people in Southeast Asia are not afraid to work. Our children have to compete against those kind of people.
From many countries. Actually, I have to leave because we will have in 10 minutes cleaning ladies.
yes.
From, believe it or not, from Georgia. They recently immigrated to Canada, and they're doing meticulous job, taking not that much money, and they're taking pride of what they're doing. Do you think I could hire Canadians to do the job? Absolutely not.
But they have prospects. They have prospects.
Yeah.
Prospects, and y'all are making me miss two of my favorite restaurants because they actually were oily restaurants, and they left recently, and I think that one of them was might have been Korean. The other one I know was Chinese because they were from mainland China, but they have gone back to their respective homes after closing down their businesses.
Yeah, well, COVID hurt a lot of restaurants. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, the market is still up, and hopefully will end today and maybe even this week. Although I'm not a strong believer in Thursdays and Fridays, but at least today we'll have Green Day. Okay?
Green Day.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today's program, and looking forward to see you next week, same place, same time.
Thanks
Bye-bye,
again.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.